Mr. Walton, did you make contact with aliens? Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How did they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food? Injection? It's important the entire world learns of your experience.
That's enough!
The teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Good evening. How you doing? Thanks for joining us wherever you are. If you're listening on your headphones or in your car, it doesn't matter. I don't know what's going on with Spreaker, but I know it sounds good on the Fringe FM, so that's where we're staying. I guess we're just having problems with Spreaker tonight. There's not much I can do about that. Not much I can do about that at all. I apologize. But hey, we're still going to have a show, so fire up your chakras. Get ready. Sync both hemispheres of your brain together and shoot your magical beam of light through your third eye tonight with us as we peer into the void, into the veil between spirituality and science. Maybe I'll try to get it back on Spreaker here in just a minute. Now, this is a live show broadcasting on the Fringe.fm, so if you're with us on the Fringe FM, thank you for listening. I don't know what's going on with Spreaker, man. I can't get to know it. I have no idea why it's doing that. But the cool news is the show's still going to go on. I've been thinking about leaving Spreaker anyways. I'm probably going to try it one more time just to go on there with it, but I can't keep doing it, man. It's just it's got too many aliens going on in there. So if you guys are listening on the Fringe FM, you want to get in the chat room on Spreaker, I'm going to try it one more time, but we're going to do it right before the break, okay? So there you go. Now, I want to say thanks to all of you who have donated for the show. I really appreciate that for your donations. We're at kind of red alert right now, so we could really use your help if you can do it. That's if you can. If you can't do it, hey, don't worry about it, and we're going to keep on going. I mean, we're not going to stop broadcasting just because things get a little rough, man. We've been doing this for over a year now, so we got to keep moving. Give me just a second. I'm going to type this in Spreaker and try it one more time. But if it puts out on me again on Spreaker on this last time, then I'm done, man. We got to make some decisions. I mean, we got our own network stream anyways. And sometimes I wonder, I know it's got a chat room and I know it's beautiful and everything, but it sure does cause me some headaches a lot of times. And, let's just see. Let's see what we're gonna try it again. And man, let's see. Hold on. Really sucks when you're trying to. It works fine on the network, so that's where we're gonna stay. And anyways, let's get the show moving on. So tonight, Mike Cleland's joining us. He's going to talk about his book, The Messengers: Synchronistic Events with UFOs, Abductions, and Owls. Pretty cool. I think you're going to love this. I do want to say. Congratulations, Yeg. I've already told you that, I think. And Saturday, I'll be over at Spaced Out Radio. And we're going to talk to Jordan Maxwell about the alien and ET presence. So it's going to be pretty cool. Oh, I'm getting tweets like crazy. Man, I don't know, but it is pretty cold this time of year. I'm having some tech issues. We've had the power go out here on the studio twice, and I don't know if it's because of the cold. We haven't had any precipitation. But, I'm not in a major city, so we've got to run stuff out here with chicken wire and everything else. But this time of year, I'm super glad that it flies by because, man, I cannot freaking stand the weather in the winter. I'm a weenie. I don't know how in the world you folks that live up north in Canada can put up with this stuff because it's ridiculous. I mean, look at it this way. If you get lost in the woods in the hot summer, you're good. You can find a water source. You can strip down if you need. You've got a pretty good chance of survival. Now, if you get lost in the woods out here and it's below freezing temperatures, you better know how to make a fire if you don't have matches or a lighter, if you're stuck out there, or you're going to die when it's below freezing. That's how I feel. It hurts when you go outside. I guess I'm just whining now, but let's get this moving. We got to move on with the show because we're running behind because of the tech issues. Now, make sure you go and get your Empower and Protect program for that, for any psychic defense or magical defense you need at lightingthevoid.com/Xavier. And we got to thank the sponsors real quick. Go out and get your bottle of Ancient Life Oil at ancientlifeoil.com. Select Joe Roop at checkout. Also, go to the website and sign up to the newsletter. I mean, we are drawing for something special. We do it like once a month. Yeg won a $150, I think it was worth like $150 DVD set full of all the great speakers in the UFO field. And that's a pretty cool gift. So it's worth it to you. It doesn't cost anything. By the way, speaking of all this tech stuff, Dennis just sent me this, and I don't know if it has something to do with it, all the hacking going on. We were talking about that last night, but there is something going on with these Intel chips. There's something that's allowing hackers to get in, which really worries me. I mean, most of my PCs have Intel chips in it. I think this one's got an i7 in it, I think. I don't know if it's the newer one or not. Anyways, these hackers are a pain in everyone's butt. They should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, don't you think? And I've been waiting for this for a long, long time. And I didn't get to see it today, so don't you spoil it for me on Twitter. But prepare yourself for this because it's one of my faves, and I'm probably going to gab about it on the show. But the X-Files Season 11 came out today. Good stuff, right? I can't wait to watch it. Thank God I've got DVR. All right, let's move on to the Gilson report since we're running just a little bit behind. I apologize about that. I know you guys love the chat room a lot. It's just, after 3 attempts on Spreaker, I'm done. I can't keep it up. I might try again after the first break and see what's going on, but other than that, yeah. I mean, we got this fancy network stream for a reason. And I'll put the recorded show up later, too, for you guys that are, want to listen to that. All right, let's go on with the Gilson report here. Something pretty interesting to check out for you. Now, Amazon patents a mirror that dresses you in virtual clothes. Patented it, okay? They hadn't released the product. Amazon has patented a blended reality mirror that lets you try on clothes virtually while placing you into a virtual location. Now, you should know not all patents turn into products. But, I mean, if you got a spouse or someone that takes forever to try on clothes, then you should just think about this if this thing comes out. Imagine how many freaking Facebook posts are going to come out of people asking if they should wear this or they should wear that. I hope it don't come out, honestly. I'm not so sure that any real men are going to be happy about this if it does hit the market. But the future is coming on, man. Have you ever spent time on YouTube just looking up all the new gadgets coming out? Because the stuff is unbelievable. I spent probably 2 hours today looking at all the new gadgets coming out. It's unbelievable. You really should if you haven't done that yet. A freaking mirror. And I think it places you in, not only does it try on clothes, but it also shows you what your clothes are going to look like in certain places. Isn't that special? I know some of you are digging that, right? Secretly. Not me. This is pretty cool. Another thing came out in Egypt today. A mysterious 26-year-old temple and statues point to a holy site at the Hill of the Pharaohs. Archaeologists working in Egypt have uncovered the remains of a mysterious 26-year-old temple and a series of sacred artifacts they believe to be part of a holy complex at the Hill of the Pharaohs. Now, in their excavations in the north of Egypt, the team said they found signs of the temple structure as well as other ancient objects, which they dated to the late period between 664 and 332 BC. The dig has uncovered part of the upper section of ancient Egyptian god carved in quartzite, an inscription relating to the Buto temple and the royal cartouche of Psamtik. The statues and other fragments, including a necklace and a symbol of the goddess Hathor, recovered from the site, have been stored at a ministry of antiquities. Dude, we're still finding new stuff from Egypt every year now, it seems. Can you imagine what's going to come out next? I mean, this is groundbreaking stuff here. For all the Egyptologists out there that keep, beating John Anthony West over the head saying he's wrong. I mean, I know you know that. You remember that in November when experts uncovered an ancient sarcophagus containing like a well-preserved mummy, wearing a intricately like painted gold and blue burial mask. You remember that? Once one of these mummies come back certified non-human, we can all start celebrating even more as disclosure is starting to trickle in, just like you and I wanted. Right? Or do you think I'm dreaming here? I don't know. I'll let you decide on that one. I'm moving pretty quick here because we got behind. Let's see. What do we got next? China plans far side of the moon landing for 2008. They want to be the first to do this. The world first craft to land on the dark side of the moon. So the battle for space exploration is commencing. I know Trump just revealed the National Space Council or whatever. So they're gearing up for this too. But it was like 10 years ago, China set its sight on the far side of the moon. Now, this year, they want to take 2 more big steps towards reaching that goal with the Chang'e 4 project, where 2 satellites that are currently expected to launch later this year. The culmination of the project will be a mission that lands on the far side of the moon. But before that spacecraft takes off, China needs to send a communication satellite to hang out above the far side of the moon so they can pass signals back and forth, which could happen as early as June. So that's pretty cool stuff. Here's something funny too. You've been seeing this on Facebook today. If you've been paying attention to social media, everybody's talking about pot legalization. Mike Tyson is planning a cannabis ranch. Now, California is now a legal marijuana state, and Mike Tyson wants in on the profits. The boxing legend just broke ground on a 40-acre marijuana resort that will be called the Tyson Ranch. I feel sorry for anybody that gets caught trying to steal from that dude's crops. That just shocks me, man. Mike Tyson. I know everybody, like, what is it? Like 1 in 3 people smoke weed now. Is it that big? I hate that I can't see the chat room. I'm so sorry, guys. But, Mike Tyson's opening up a freaking pot ranch. And still yet we've got all these other states that won't even legalize it medically. I know you've seen the videos online where some of this stuff has helped people get over seizures. What is our deal with this pot thing? When are we going to get over it? You've heard this over and over again, but we've got to get out of the dark ages. If you're going to sell somebody alcohol and let them leave the store with something that can literally kill anybody that they come in contact with if they drink enough of it, how am I supposed to trust you if you tell me that marijuana is legal or illegal? I don't even smoke it. I can't because they don't have regular weed anymore. Back in the day, they had regular weed. Now they got this, death and kill your mother and this name and that name. And it all freaking, it's way too powerful. But it's still, I could drink a fifth of whiskey and probably die but I could smoke a pound of grass. That's an old school term for weed, by the way. And still be able to function more than likely. Still be able to make good judgments, do what I need to do. Probably don't want to get off the couch, but I will if I have to. So what's the deal? Why are we doing this to people still? There's plenty of money to be made in it. This is going to be our next push right now. I think we're going to have our next push. We're going to see more states, and we're going to finally fill up the United States, hopefully by the end of 2018, where everybody's either going to have it at least legal medically or recreationally. All right, so we're going to go into the break here. When we come back, we're going to have Mike Clelland on. Stick around for that. We're going to talk about UFOs, abductions, and owls, and the synchronistic events between them. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back.
Pull back the blinds and uncover the truth. This is Lighting the Void Radio.
KTLK Digital Broadcasting. We rock the paranormal talk.
Lighting the Void is proud to announce Mind and Magic's Protection and Defense Course for protection from magical and psychic attacks. This is not a joke. Magic practitioners are on the rise, and with that comes attacks from baneful or black magicians that try to harm or hurt others for their own selfish reasons. If you are not a believer in psychic attacks, then this isn't for you. If you are, and you want the power to defend yourself and your family and home, then I highly suggest you grab Freighter Xavier's Protection and Defense Course. In this course, you will learn how to tell if you are under attack from a natural source or if an individual is attacking you. The 4 forms of curses and attacks. How to remove self-imposed curses. The correct way to cleanse your home from negativity or malevolent entities. How to make your own holy water. What you should always keep near or under your bed. Herbs that banish negativity and promote purity. The most powerful banishing rituals on the planet. And for those that seem to want to harm you the most, how to put your enemies in a hell pit of their own making. You can also learn protection against shadow people and other entities. Or are you just in a bad planetary alignment? Even how to get rid of an enemy using a tic-tac box. It does not matter what your faith or belief is, this will work. Click the banner on the website at lightingthevoid.com or go to lightingthevoid.com/Xavier.
Hi, folks. See.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio with Joseph Roop. Stay up to date right now. lightingthevoid.com.
Hi, this is Ryan Gable, host of the Secret Teachings radio show. If you are interested in ancient knowledge and hidden mysteries, as well as a unique and balanced perspective on conspiracies, symbols, and the occult, then join me every Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on The Fringe.
Hey, space travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
On the Fringe FM, we rock the paranormal talk.
Come own the night with us. Hi there, this is Dave Scott, host of Spaced Out Radio. Every Monday through Friday, right here on KTLK, the Fringe FM, I'm going to lead you down a path of mystery, intrigue, and suspense. So whether you've seen a UFO, had a run-in with Bigfoot or Dogman, or had ghosts running around your house, this is the place to be. Spaced Out Radio, right here on KTLK.
This is Lighting the Void Radio with your host, Joseph Roop. It's the show about truth-seeking and freeing the spirit, shattering your limited beliefs, revealing hidden truths, and much, much more.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. Yeah, I tried to go back on Spreaker again, guys, and it's just not working. I don't know what the deal is. Spreaker don't like me. But I did figure out what was going on. The encoder changed on me, and I didn't change anything. Didn't update my computer or anything. So I'm sorry about that. But anyways, don't forget, Saturday night, I'm going to have Jordan Maxwell on Spaced Out Saturday. We're going to be talking about the ETs among us. All right, let's bring on our guests. Mike Clelland is an avid outdoorsman, illustrator, and UFO researcher. He has written extensively on the subject of alien abductions, synchronicities, and owls. It was his first-hand experiences with these elusive events that have been the foundation for his research. His website, Hidden Experiences, explores these events and their connections to the alien contact phenomena. This site also features over 200 hours of audio interviews with visionaries and experts examining the complexities of the overall UFO experience. Beyond that, Mike is considered an expert in the skills of ultralight backpacking and has authored or illustrated a series of instructional books focused on advanced outdoor techniques. He spent nearly 25 years living in the Rockies and now lives in the Adirondacks. I hope I said that right. Mike, welcome to Lighting the Void. Sorry about all the tech issues, man, but thanks for being here.
Oh, no. We're dealing with a brand new technology. No, this is a decade ago. There would have been no such thing as this. No worries at all. Yes. Thank you. It was great. We met, I think there would have been less than a year ago, It would have been April of 2017.
Yep, at the Arkansas Paranormal UFO Conference. Your table is right next to ours. And I got to say, I've been curious about that ever since I saw your book, because I've studied a lot of stuff about UFOs and I'm really digging into the paranormal phenomena. But the owl connection, I got to be honest with you, I have waited for this show for you to enlighten me on this, because I've seen owls here in Arkansas my whole life, but I haven't seen any UFOs, but I hear about it a lot. So I'm glad you're here with us to explain all this.
Well, I don't know if I can explain it away, because it's a mystery to me too. So I'm just I'm tickling the outskirts of the edges of this whole it's a genuine mystery, and I wish I had a good answer. And so I'll do my best.
Hey, let me ask you a question real quick, since you're into the outdoors and all that. Like this cold weather, I was talking about that at the beginning of the show, and I really believe if I got lost out in these woods, I've lived here my whole life, since you do this a little bit, I would freeze to death. Now, if you don't pack a backpack or a lighter and it's 17 degrees, you can still live, right? What do you need to do? What's the first thing you need to do? I just want to know before we get into this.
Oh, well,
thing.
So, there's any number of things, so yes, you would have to be dressed warm. So I've worked on Denali. I've worked up in the big mountains of Alaska. I've done a lot of winter camping in the Rocky Mountains, and my record for sleeping out under the stars is 40 degrees below zero.
Good grief, man.
But now I'll tell you, that was with as thick a winter sleeping bag as that has ever been created by a high-end down sleeping bag. I had a great big thick down coat on. I had great big thick down pants on. I had down booties on. I had I had gloves on. I was completely, and I had eaten all kinds of fat before climbing in, butter and chocolate and cheese and stuff like that before climbing into the sleeping bag. So I had, as we say, we put quarters in the dryer. You got to put quarters in the dryer. I had all kinds of fuel on board, and it was pretty remarkable. It was pretty cool. But that's cold. Let me tell you, that's cold. Like, I feel like I'm made of pretty tough stuff, and that's cold. So 17 degrees above or below zero?
Well, it's just 17 degrees. It's cold enough for when I go out. The wind chill is like 0. So when I go outside, man, I've got to scrunch up my shoulders, and I got that squishy face, like the pain face.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're in that kind of temperatures, you would need full, winter gear. You'd have to have, proper boots, proper gloves, proper coat, proper insulating layers so you don't get sweaty from the inside out, because it would be, even if you had, you were dressed nice and warm, if you got sweaty from the inside out, that wetness would, evaporative coolant properties of being wet would be dangerous. And you know what, honestly, in the winter, it's really hard to make a fire. It's not as easy as you think. So, cause, especially in deep snow, cause the snow itself will burn down you have to dig away to get to the ground before you can truly light a fire. You can't really set a fire on top of the snow. So yeah, that would be serious to be caught. So yeah, my advice is don't get caught out in the woods at 17 degrees without, proper clothing and with proper clothing and stuff like that, it should be no problem. But, and then, just keeping active. Don't lay down and take a nap. That'd be disastrous. If you had to spend the night out walking circles around a tree and build a fire, walk in circles around the fire, I guess would be the better thing to do. So
don't fall asleep, right?
Well, you want to have your metabolic rate high, right? So you want to be active to keep yourself warm from the inside out.
Okay, good. I was curious about that. I was looking at your website and I was thinking maybe I ought to ask Mike about this.
Well, yeah. So if you have the proper gear, there's all kinds of, I mean, I can tell you about, we can change the subject, but
no.
Yeah. So it's,
what would be the one biggest thing, like if you don't have a lighter or a match, what would be the biggest thing what would you start a fire with, man?
I would have to start a fire with a lighter or a match. Yeah. There's no such thing. You can't do it with a bow drill. I mean, you would die of frustration before you had to, twirl a little piece of wood and start a fire like that with friction. There's similar things that they make that are kind of, like little sparkers, but you still have to have something very flammable to light the sparker with. So yeah, a lighter, what 99-cent Bic lighter from the, grocery store checkout line is as foolproof as anything on this earth. So,
whole thing with the Tom Hanks and Castaway doing all that stuff that may
it's
work,
possible.
But don't depend on it, right?
No, it's possible, but you better believe that, the people who do that and use a bow drill or something like that, what they'll do is they'll keep the fire going for days and days and days so they don't have to do it again. So.
Just to let everybody know, I think we're back on Spreaker now, so if you want to jump in the chat room, that's great. I'm glad that's finally working. Again, I don't know what happened there. It might have something to do with what Dennis is talking about with these Intel chips, because I've got an i7 in my PC, and they'd better fix that. Anyways, Mike, so your book called The Messengers, do you specifically talk about your experiences or other experiences, or just the research that you've dug into about owls and the UFO experience and the abduction experience?
So the book is just a little bit shy of 400 pages. I haven't really figured out how many the page count of my experiences versus the other one. But I'm going to say that, yes, the book is a big part of the book is my own personal experiences with owls, as well as with coming to terms with the UFO contact experience. This is turn the clock back a few years ago. I would not have been able to say it. I would have been able to dance around it. I would have been able to say, I have all these things in my life that if you look at it closely, it would imply perhaps that there has been some sort of UFO contact. I wouldn't come out and say it. I would dance around it and say it like that. Honestly, that all changed after finishing the book in a way, because I feel like now, that was a grand re-examination of myself, this book. And I'm saying it straight up. I have had UFO contact. Some people don't like the term abduction. It's got a lot of baggage, that term itself. But that's the term we're stuck with. So I would have to say that I'm an abductee. And
wait a minute. Why does that term have a lot of baggage though?
Because there's if you get within the crew of folks who go to UFO conferences and stuff like that, there's some love and light folks that see this as on one far extreme, there's people who see it as like an angelic intervention into the benevolence of all things wonderful and ushering mankind into a new cosmic grooviness. And on the other end of that, continuum is the people who are saying, no, like I was violated by, evil aliens, and they took me against my will, and they're heartless, soulless bastards. And so there's this continuum. On one end, it's love and light, and on the other end, it's darkness and evil. I have listened to both sides of the story, and I have carefully examined my own stuff, and I don't have anything in my experiences that really points to anything bad. I've been scared, but I don't have anything bad associated with it that I can tell. So the term UFO, abductee, John Mack back in the 1990s put out a book, Abduction, which is very interesting because it's got abduction right in the title. He said it was his publisher who gave it the title that. He didn't want to call it that. And he refers to the people who've had the abduction experience not as abductees but as experiencers. So there's folks that'll use the term experiencer. They're all synonyms to me. They all mean the same thing: an abductee, a contactee, someone who's had abduction. They're all saying in essence the same thing. Each one of those terms are weighted with a little bit of baggage. Like one implies something bad, one implies something. The experiencer in the middle implies something benevolent, or excuse me.
Well, I'm thinking that if somebody had a real rough experience in an abduction or experience, then I guess
and there are people who have.
They would be a little sensitive to it, so I can understand that. Yeah. And
then on the other side, there's people who like treat the whole thing as like a mankind's ascension into something more magnificent, and they don't like the term abductee. So I've been told straight up, don't you use that term? And I'm like, it's the term we're stuck with.
Now, is there any relation?
If I called it something else, no one would know what I was talking about.
Right. Yeah, I get that. And you've been to a ton of conferences though, hadn't you? So you know about that. A lot you deal with. I remember watching you, man. You talked to a lot of people at the Arkansas conference. That's a pretty big one.
Oh, I love talking to folks. Yeah, and that was a great conference. Yeah, I love talking to folks, and I love listening to their stories and stuff like that. So, in the core of my research has been the owl thing. Because of my own experiences. That's the question I ask people now. And I ask it partially because I'm curious, and partially because I'm just astounded. I'm really amazed and enthralled and excited to hear these owl stories, because it feels like, on one level it feels like new territory that hasn't really been covered much, and on another, I can relate to it really well because I've had a lot of my own owl experiences. Now, obviously, yes, there are real owls. They fly around the woods. People see owls all the time. They hear them all the time. There's nothing paranormal about the owl itself, right? So if you see an owl, doesn't mean it's some sort of paranormal thing. If you see an owl in the context of something highly charged,
that's a synchronistic thing. Experience. They're always around.
Yeah, then you have to re-examine. And I think that's the way. I keep on going back to like the shaman. Like if you were in living in a little Indian village in North Dakota 400 years ago, before Whitey arrived, you'd be able to if you had a strange experience. Let's say you had a kind of you were going through a life change, or you were meditating on a new chapter of your life and in the village and such, and then you walked down the path and you were confronted with an owl. An owl flew in front of you, or made itself known to you. You could go to the shaman at the edge of the village and say, can you interpret what this might mean? And the shaman would then ask questions, not about how big was the owl, or, what time of day was it? That's the kind of questions a UFO researcher would ask if you saw a UFO, like where were you? What direction was it? What time of day? The shaman would be not very interested in that. They would be interested in what was going on in your spiritual life at the time, what was going on in afterwards, what kind of changes took place after you saw the owl. And that could be any number of animals. I mean, there's lots of animals with a lot of sort of highly charged spiritual power in the mythic lore of the world's traditions. Wolves and eagles and hummingbirds. There's rich tradition of hummingbirds all over the world.
So I take it you do believe in the spirit animal thing, the spirit animal connection to the person. Do you believe in that?
Well, what I can say is that it's a very seductive thread to pull on, right? So you're to a dead end, and you're like, oh, I've run out of questions to ask. Well, let's go down this totem animals thing. So you kind of pull on the thread, and a lot of the research presently is like, online Google research and stuff like that. So the problem with that is if you have an idea, like, oh, I have this kind of like, I have a preconceived idea what I want owl contact to be associated with. Well, let me tell you, you can find it online. You can cherry pick the data to make it match whatever you want. So it's been a challenge to sort of step back and kind of be a little more neutral in these waters. But what I can say is that it's been a very fruitful avenue to go down, right? To walk down that path and think about, like, let's re-examine not only the owl, but the UFO contact experience itself as a form of let's say shamanic initiation, which is something that other researchers have done. John Mack has gone down, has swam in these waters, let's say. And, but the owl is, and as far as a totem animal, and this is right, you're having Jordan Maxwell's. It's funny. I called him out of the blue one. One time he gave his phone number on the air. So here's my home phone number.
Jordan,
I'm calling him. So I called him up, and I could tell he was totally annoyed. And I was like, I felt like I had like 2 minutes before he was going to hang up on me, and I just got right to the point. So I'm doing this owl research. What's the mythic totem message, the symbolism behind an owl?
Right.
And he said, and I've used this, I've parroted his quote. He just said, the owl in all the world's mythologies is known for its ability to see into the darkness, to fly into the darkness. And that becomes a metaphor for traveling to other realms, for traveling to the land of the dead, for traveling to the land of the gods, for traveling to these realms that we cannot access easily. You take that one step further. The owl not only flies to these other territories, and this is completely in the mythology, in the mythic realm of the owl. Obviously, they're just flying around the woods at night. But in the mythic realm, they fly to other realms, and then they return. And they return with a message. That is pretty close to universal throughout the world's mythological treatments of the owl. And anyone would recognize that the owl flies at night and has that power. And that must have seemed absolutely magical to ancient man before the age of the electric light bulb. So then the next question is like, okay, what is this message? What is the message coming back with? So here's typical. I've got this in one form or another over and over and over again. Someone's sitting in the woods. Someone's sitting in the desert. Here, I'll tell you one. The guy sitting in a desert named Derek. This is one of the first stories that really set me off on this path. Sitting in the desert, he is just talking to a buddy. It's this looking at the stars. The first time he's really been in the desert, he's amazed. And then there's this big tall cactus, and they look up, and there's this owl staring down at him. And both him and his friend are like, wow, this is creepy. Like, I didn't see this thing fly up. And how did it get here? And this is really ominous. Owl flies off. Moments later, a UFO flies over him. A triangle-shaped craft flies over them. And I've sat with him, and he's tried to describe how it hugged the terrain. Like, it moved over and hugged the actual terrain of the land in this very unsettling way that did not match any kind of known aircraft. Absolutely perfectly silent. So he sees he sees an owl, then sees a UFO. I've got that story, one form or another, over and over and over and over again. What do you make? I mean, how do you?
Got to be something there. Yeah.
And then, so is the owl there? The owl would be there the same way. I mean, it's a totem animal. It's there to announce something. It's there for a reason. I've heard this story too many times to say that, to not recognize that there's something going on.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Now, that is fascinating to me. I was thinking about when you were talking about that too, the shaman, the Indian totems, how they were with the animals. Even the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians had totems and stuff like that as well. But I ponder why we don't know the connection. It's like maybe you don't understand the connection in this realm. Now, a fascinating thing that we talked about last night with Lorian was all of her ET contacts weren't really, she's had a few physical ones, right, that she's seen, but most of the biggest contacts she's had she was discussing was like internal, like maybe you could call it the astral realm or the spiritual realm, right? And it makes me wonder how all of this is tied together, you know, because I really believe this, the ETs, the alien experience, the abductions, well, let's just say some of them are tied in with some type of spiritual experience that we just don't understand. We're not putting it together. And incredibly enough, that's what I made this show all about. That's what Lighting the Void's about. I'm trying to figure out the connection between the two. And that's why I'm so interested in your work as well.
Well, I mean, you just said it. You said her experiences took place in the astral plane, right, or in the astral realm.
Yeah,
that's kind of an open-ended, fuzzy thing. But I think on an intuitive level, I know just what you're saying. And then, you know, so there are nuts and bolts researchers. You know, they're interested in the burn marks in the yard, and they want to go check the radar returns at the local airport. All that stuff's important. But if you sat with that nuts and bolts researcher and said, "Listen, I had this experience on the astral realm." And here's what it felt important, and here's why, they would, you know, they wouldn't pay attention. They would be focused on the nuts and bolts stuff. So, you know, and it's very difficult, this more ethereal aspects. All I can really do is work off the patterns, right?
Sure.
So I've got a lot of stories where I just get one story and no connection to it, right? And I got nothing to back it up. I got other stories where I have lots of the same account over and over again. And that's when I start to trust it, when I see these patterns. I mean, the person with a one-off may very well be telling me absolutely the truth, and there may be the clue that, you know, that leads me to the, you know, final unveiling of the ultimate knowledge of all this stuff in that story. But it's difficult because it's hard to know without some sort of confirmation alongside another story that's similar.
Yeg is wanting to know in the Spreaker chat, do people have experiences? Do they see owls where owls don't usually live?
Well, they certainly see owls during the day, and owls are notorious for being out at night. Obviously, they're night animals, and you know, so the problem is owls live everywhere, right? They're all over the place. There's every continent except Antarctica has owls. So seeing an owl is not that unusual. What's more unusual is seeing, let's say, a snowy owl or a great gray owl in terrain that you might not see it. So those owls are both the snowy owls in very far north, and then it will migrate down to lower latitudes in the winter because there's no game in the winter. They can't catch mice at you know, in the Arctic in the winter. And then the great gray owl is mostly in Canada. Most of there's obviously some they show up a little bit south of but that 49th parallel that divides the United States and Canada is a good way to demarcate the territory of the great gray owl. And but you know, if someone sees a great gray owl in Georgia, boy, you gotta really think hard and, you know, like, what did they really see? Are they misidentifying it, or if they, you know, so.
Man, this stuff is really fascinating to me because I think there's a connection. Now, one thing that came up in my mind, and there may be no connection at all, but in like some of the secret societies, like the Bilderberg group, they got this big owl, and is that just a thing they're idolizing because the owl is all wise? Or do they know something we don't know about the owls, you think?
That's not the Bilderberg. That's the Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove. I'm sorry.
So,
you know,
and it's so straight up at the Bohemian Grove, you go to, there's a clubhouse right in downtown San Francisco, and, you know, you can walk in and there's pictures of the inside of the clubhouse, and all over the inside of the clubhouse, there's references to Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom. There's statues of Athena. So she was the goddess of commerce, war. She was the goddess of war. She was also the goddess of arts and crafts and mathematics. So men's club, rich men, you know, so that's the goddess Athena is a perfect sort of emblem for a men's club like that. I don't see anything sinister or conspiratorial about that.
Sure.
Now, the Athena had a totem owl, had a pet owl. So this Athena is often pictured with an owl, and this goes back to the Parthenon, which is the temple of Athena, and supposedly there were owls that lived in that, and there's the type of owl is called the little owl. If you look it up in a kind of owl, it's a Mediterranean owl called the little owl, and that's its text name. So that was the owl that was associated with Athena. So the Owl of Athena shows up all over on the stationery. It's on the, it's above the doorway when you enter the Bohemian Club in San Francisco. Now, where it gets a little bit more elusive is the Bohemian Grove, which is their out of their country estate there, where they have an annual summer meeting with soon to be presidents, ex-presidents, the Rockefellers, the actual controlling elite go there every summer, and there is a big giant owl.
Right.
It's my understanding it is a big rock that has been doctored with cement to look like an owl, and it's kind of creepy owl. And then there's these weird, I don't want to say rituals. That might be a little strong, but there are these ritualistic performances that show up there.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Every summer in front of this owl. And, I don't want to get into sort of the Alex Jones territory here, because I simply don't know, but there's all kinds of speculation on what may or may not be going on there. What is most certain is that the people who do go there they are the world leaders. They are the power elite. They are the controllers. So yes, so why there's an owl there, I don't know, but it is certainly a powerful emblem and a powerful totem. And an owl is a powerful bird too. I mean, you see an owl at night, and it's not like seeing a bunny rabbit. I mean, it's got an aura and mystique about it.
Yeah, I mean, even here in Arkansas in the woods, it's really rare. When I hear one, like what we call a hoot owl out here, which is kind of just a southern term for it, but that's what we call it. When I hear one, everybody gets real quiet because they want to embrace it. Because I got to be honest with you, man. It does feel like there's something sacred about it.
It sure does. And I mean, you see an owl in a zoo, and it's got a lot of power to it. You know what I mean? It's very interesting. So there's a animal rescue center here, and they have a whole bunch of owls. And man, let me tell you, you get nose to nose with a big barred owl, and it's eerie. I mean, they're obviously caged, but it's not like looking at a crow or a parrot or something like that. Right. It's got a totally different vibe.
Now, I know you don't have you're honest about your research. You're like me. You're studying the parallels of everything, because I really believe when you find parallels in stories or events, you're getting close to the truth, because it's so hard to believe anything down to the T when there's so much information coming around. But, in your gut, Mike, what do you think, do you think the correlation between abductions, synchronistic events, and owls are? Do you have any idea what it could be?
Well, let's just say I'm just gonna use some visual. Something's going on, right? So with a synchronicity, it's almost like, you put on this, you have special, let's say, special glasses that are, night vision glasses that are designed specifically to capture some higher vibration, right? So you have a powerful synchronicity. I'm convinced, I'm not convinced, but this is one way to visualize it, that someone across the room could be watching you have that powerful synchronicity. Maybe it's a phone call at just the right moment or something like that. I'm saying that you would give off a little vibrational glow, let's say. And I'm saying that if you got taken aboard a UFO, one of the things, so here's very common people describe UFO contact, close UFO people, not even a UFO flies over, flying saucer flies over a witness. They all say the same thing. It got eerily quiet. Not just that it got quiet, but everything got quiet. It's not that the craft flew without sound, but the craft eliminated all sound. Suddenly all the crickets were gone. There was no leaves rustling. There was no crunching of the grass under my feet. I've heard this over and over. Eerie, eerie, eerie silence associated with this. So I'm saying that and I have people who've seen owls and describe that same eerie silence. It's referred to as the Oz factor by some researchers. So you put on these, special goggles. You watch someone getting on board a UFO. I'm saying they are going to be glowing with a weird vibe. Something is going on in the presence of that craft. Could the owl simply be attracted to this? Right? I mean, there's no animal on Earth that has better vision or better hearing. So if there was a craft that was creating an eerie silence, owl could hear it from miles away. Owl could see it from miles away. Wouldn't they? Maybe they would just fly to it. I mean, that's one way to look at it. It gets a little more murky when you start, trying to figure out the times, right? When it aligns exactly with a UFO, which I have many accounts where owls show up right with a UFO. That certainly could be the owl may have just been attracted. The flying saucer could have been, in essence, a giant dog whistle that simply attracted the owl. I don't think that's it. I think it's something more paranormal. I think the owl is playing a role, like an archetypal role, the same role that would have been played by that would have been recognized by our ancient ancestors who had a much more nuanced and rich connection to the natural world. I think that's still that was hardwired into our DNA somehow, that knowledge that an owl is somehow special and is an archetype is the term. It has an archetypal meaning. The meaning of the owl is stored within our genetic memory banks. So if it's showing up at these moments, it's showing up for the same reasons it showed up to our ancients. So I'm at the point now where I'm seeing these modern UFO contact experiences as just an extension of the ancient mythologies that have been around with us since time began. I mean, the ancient Celtic fairy lore is perfect, right? I mean, the fairies take someone wanders off into the woods of Scotland or Ireland, and the fairies take them into a magic world, and time stands still, and their babies are taken, and there's all kinds of stuff with pregnant women in these stories, which all repeat present day in the modern UFO folklore. And so these owls, I think, are playing an archetypal role. They are playing the same role they played for ancient man. They're here to announce some powerful, resonant moment in this the experience
really cool
of life.
omen, right? Yeah, like a real. Is omen the right word?
Perfect. It's a perfect word. Yeah, omen tends to be a little bit. Omen has a negative thing, like, ooh, I had a bad omen. An omen. But I guess you could have a good omen. Sure, there's no problem with that. But yes, omen is the perfect term. The reason I know this is because when I do the writing, I have a thesaurus, and I just refer to it constantly because I can't. It's hard when you do these you're writing a book about like experiences that are weird and ethereal, and you can't just use the same word over and over again. So yes, omen is the perfect word.
And so you've had your own experiences, kind of paranormal, maybe spiritual type experiences in your life, right?
Yes.
Really cool.
Yes,
man.
enough to. I mean, the 400-page book is not all about me, but there's a goodly amount in there about me. So.
And everybody, if they want to get your book, you can go to Amazon. It's pretty much everywhere, right?
Well, it's on Amazon mostly. Yeah, it's a little. So if you went to your local bookstore, you could look it up and they could order it. And but it's now that the demise of the Main Street bookstore, it's pretty hard to just pick up on the bookshelf at a bookstore. You really need to order it.
Well,
and Amazon is the way to go. Yeah.
I'm going to start paying. I will tell you this. I'm going to start paying really close attention now when owls are around, because I'm going to start looking up. I guess that's the thing to do. Would you say, hey, that's not a bad idea?
Well, if there's owls, there's normal owls, right? There's normal everyday owls. So, check out, compare and contrast what was going on in your life at that moment, I've had people say, this is a story. There's no UFOs in some of these stories. Someone's had like UFO experiences in their life, and they're walking along. They say, I'm gonna walk in the woods. I just need to get away. I just need to meditate. I'm going to go for a nice long walk. And while they're on the long walk, they think to themselves, boy, I really need to know whether I'm on the right path or not. Like life path, not in the path in the woods. Like, am I on the right life path? Boom. At that moment, simultaneously with their thought, an owl hoots. Oftentimes I never see the owl, and an owl hoots. So now there's a highly charged moment, right? You're asking the universe. You're doing a ritual act. You're going into the woods to have that powerful like spiritual moment. Yeah. You ask a question, you get a direct answer. That's very common. And that's the kind of thing I think you could go to the shaman at the edge of your village and say, here's what happened.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we're going to take a break. I want to talk a little bit more about this stuff with Mike, owls, UFOs, experiences, abductions, maybe. Pretty interesting stuff. Stick around. We'll be right back with Mike Clelland.
Digital Broadcasting, thefringe.fm, Napa Valley, California, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, guess what? TalkStream Live has just released a new paranormal app exclusively for the paranormal community called Paranormal Radio. Paranormal Radio has a great selection of streaming talk shows dealing with UFOs, the supernatural, sacred geometry, NDEs, and much more, including a network highly recommended, The Fringe FM. You can download Paranormal Radio right now from Google Play and the iTunes App Store.
Oh, you know what I like about me? This is Rich Giordano, host of the Paranormal Code. No, I'm serious. The show's on twice a week now, Sunday and Thursday, on thefringe.fm and Spreaker, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. Yeah, it's 2 hours. It's live. And I do a show like you've never heard before. So you're going to come here, you're going to get your information, you're going to be entertained. But you're also going to hear the truth like, you won't forget, like you've never heard before. And for those of you who've been following, thank you. Thank you for talking me into this extra night. Now I'm on twice. Great. Hey, good for you, right? The Paranormal Code. This means something.
Paranormal. Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal.
The U.S. military holds the ability to time travel.
Jeremy Scott asks the questions that we're all dying to know.
Wow, that's a remarkable question.
Watch your step. Hide under your blankets.
The show that is going to make you think.
Prepare yourself for what you're about to hear.
This transmission is coming to
you. You're riding into the Parabnormal.
Live Saturday nights at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern on KTLK, The Fringe.
Hey folks, CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. There's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Do you find yourself bored and longing to learn more about the mysteries and conspiracies behind our reality? Specifically, every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific? What a coincidence, because that's exactly when me, Gigi, and my lovely co-host Cortana kicked over the airwaves with just the right amount of intellectual stimulation to give you that eargasm of conversational excellence that you deserve. So be sure to check out our show, Shift Happens, every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific, that's 9 to 11 Central. And let's shake some talk radio tail feather, shall we? Right here on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Hey, it is I, Kurt Green from the Kurt Green Hour. Come hang out with me every Wednesday night at midnight, Pacific Standard Time. As we unwind, hey, grab a cup of coffee, hang out with me, enjoy the ride. That's midnight every Wednesday night, right here on the Fringe.fm.
Hey, Fringe Fringe FM listeners, guess what? TalkStream Live has just released a new paranormal app exclusively for the paranormal community called Paranormal Radio. Paranormal Radio has a great selection of streaming talk shows dealing with UFOs, the supernatural, sacred geometry, NDEs, and much more, including a network highly recommended, The Fringe FM. You can download Paranormal Radio right now from Google Play and the iTunes App Store.
This is Lighting the Void Radio with your host, Joseph Roop. It's the show about truth-seeking and freeing the spirit, shattering your limited beliefs, revealing hidden truths, and much, much more.
We are still getting strange on Sundays. Hey everyone, it's me, Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange Radio, letting you know we're on live Sunday nights right here on the Fringe FM. The Strange Sunday Saga continues live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Listen on thefringe.fm or at beyondthestrange.com. Again, that's Sunday nights, 5 p.m. Pacific. See you there.
To call the show, pick up the phone and dial 501-777-5631. That's 501-777-5631.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. Yeah, that's right. We are back. We're on Spreaker now, so if you want to come over and join that chat room, you can. Been on the network the whole time, and we'll get this all finalized for you for all the podcast listeners later. Don't forget, this Saturday, I'm going to be on Spaced Out Radio hosting Spaced Out Saturday with Jordan Maxwell. We're going to talk about his experiences and the ETs among us, and I'm here with Mike Clelland talking about his book, The Messengers. We're talking about synchronicities, UFOs, abductions, and how we're just trying to put it all together here. And before the break, Mike, I was asking you about your own experiences. And, I really don't know where to start. Because you said you filled up the book with quite a few of your own. Where would you start as far as experiences go, telling us about that?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so as a boy... So I'm 55 years old. So I was in 1974. I would have been 12 years old. I'm pretty sure these two events took place both in 1974. One was I was at a friend's house. His name is Kenny. We're in his bedroom. It was a sleepover. It was a Friday or Saturday night, and we look out the window, and there was something out the window. I can't remember if it was him or me that said, "Look." We ran up to the glass, pushed our nose against the glass, and looked at this thing. And it looked like a coffee can in the night sky. There was enough ambient light in the sky. We could see it very clearly. It had little rotating lights. It was the craft itself was rotating. And we watched it for maybe 30 seconds, and then click, it disappeared. And we drew it. We both drew it that night. I still have the drawing as a 12-year-old boy. I've since done a more detailed drawing. It's in the book. But I used to say that the lights turned off and we couldn't see it anymore. I don't say that anymore. I always knew I was lying when I said that. It disappeared. It vanished. Poof, gone. And so now so as a 12-year-old boy, I'm open to this, right? So this is sort of the era of. There were a lot of TV specials on at that point, and there was the show In Search Of came out right around that time with Leonard Nimoy, and so I'm open to this stuff, and I've seen it, and 30 seconds was all it took. Your life is forever changed, because it was not like this is long before Air Force drones or something like that.
Did you tell anybody, at school?
Oh, I
your
told
friends?
Everyone. Oh God, yeah.
What'd they say? They say you were crazy?
I never really got that, really. You could see them kind of glaze over.
Yeah.
More. Most people just aren't that interested in it. But I would, I could certainly tell the story. Now, the second story I had, I was coming home from a high school football game, and I would have been, so it was about a half mile from my house to where the high school is. And I was in junior high, and it's what we all did on Friday nights was go to the football game. And I was coming home in time to see television show, which is interesting. It's called Kolchak the Night Stalker. I don't know if you've ever seen it. You could rent it on Vimeo or something like that. So it's out there. It's an amazing, cool television show from the 70s. And it was all about vampires and zombies. And it's predecessor to the X-Files. That was Chris Carter says the X-Files was based on
What's the first word again? Because I'm writing this down.
Oh, Kolchak is spelled funny. Kolschak. And it's the guy's name. He's a reporter. Darren McGavin played this reporter, and he would always be investigating, ghosts and stuff like that. It's a wonderful show. But anyway, as a 12-year-old boy, oh my God, it was perfect. And so I wanted to be home in time to see this television show. So I got home. Oh, so we're walking home. There's a spot in the sidewalk. I know I could go right to that spot and with chalk and just put an X on the sidewalk to the millimeter where I was standing. And there was a bright orange flash in the sky. And it was like God flipped a light switch and turned the sky bright orange, and then click, turned it off. And it was a calm autumn, lovely night in the suburbs of Michigan. And so both me and my friend I was with, we were like, it was really jarring. We kind of went through the checklist. Was that a meteor? Or was that like lightning over the horizon? Was that like one of the transformers on a telephone pole exploding? And no, it wasn't any of that. It couldn't have been. It was silent. It was just this electric, vivid orange for 1 second and then click off. So I get home and Mike lives a little deeper into the neighborhood, so he had another little bit to walk, and I my parents were like angry at me when I walked in the house. I'm like, what are you angry at me for? And they're like, you can't be out this late. It's not that late. It's 9:30. And they pointed to the clock, and it was getting close to 11:30. And I remember the 11 o'clock news was ending, so it must have been about 11:20, 11:25.
Oh.
And that didn't make any sense at all to me.
So you had some missing time there.
So I had missing time, but the missing time was not in any vocabulary word. This was long before Bud Hopkins ever wrote about missing time. So I just was bummed out. I didn't know why my parents were angry at me. I wanted to see this television show. I was confused. And the next Monday at school, my friend, his name is also Mike, we're at the cafeteria, and I remember this really clearly. And he says, I said, something weird happened Friday night. We saw this weird, this weird thing happen, this orange light in the sky. And he said, yeah, we saw a UFO with lights and everything. And I never saw a UFO. He just blurted that out, and I was immediately clammed up. My whole sense was that he exaggerated and made it up. Now, 35 years later, 40 years later, I'm not so sure. It sure seems like, there's more to the story. I've since tried to go through hypnotic regression, and nothing really has come up about that event. So,
is it okay to you that you don't find the answers to this stuff? Because it's not okay with me. It drives me. I'm serious when I say this, Mike. I stay up at nights trying to figure this stuff out in my head. It's ridiculous. I'm perplexed by these things. I for some reason, I want to figure this stuff out. And everyone always tells me, you're never going to figure it out. Don't even worry. I'm like, well, don't tell me that. That makes it, because I'm not going to stop.
Well, so yes, they're correct. You're never going to figure it out. Maybe after you die, maybe go to a mountaintop and meditate in the Himalayas, grow a big long beard and meditate continually for 10 years. You might get a glimpse, but my sense is we're not going to figure this out. And my sense also is that if you keep searching, it's a cool thing to research. I mean, it forces you to ask really the big questions. It forces you to ask, why are we here? What does it all mean? Why, what happens after we die? There's all these powerful questions that arise out of this search, which are vital and important to being human, to ask those questions. So, A, you won't figure it out. B, you're probably a better person if you go on this search. So,
just saying that, I know you're right. I know you're right about what you just said, but even that perplexes me. Like, why does it have to be such a mystery? I guess, I think it was Jeff Harmon that told me this. Maybe the mystery is the most important thing, because if you knew, then the ride would be over.
Exactly. I mean, that's like the mystery novel, right? I mean, it ends in the last 3 pages, and then, it's like the rest of the, yeah. I mean, there's something seductive about the mystery novel, but
if that's the case, Mike, how come, and I could be wrong about this, but how come we're starting to get signs of disclosure, like with the government and all this stuff? It seems like things over the years, unless it's just me, are slowly coming to light more and more. Like almost like, I feel like, how Art Bell used to talk about this thing called the quickening, right? I think that we're getting prepared for something. Maybe it's death. I don't know. Maybe it is, but I feel like that there's something else here that we're getting prepared for.
Yeah. So whatever's happening with the powers that be, it feels like there was like some decision makers. Like, I mean, whatever, what is it, 6 or 7 people that stood on the stage with Tom DeLonge and basically, walked up to the podium and introduced themselves and gave their credentials. And like, that didn't happen by accident. Someone had to give the okay. They didn't do that. They're not just renegades. They got approval to do that. The question is why? Why did they get approval? What? And presently it's all about the hardware, right? It's about, the Navy pilot saw something that made impossible maneuvers, and then they say, if you look at the New York Times article, it says there's materials that are in a specially built warehouse somewhere in Nevada. So, we got materials, and now I will say that they say in that New York Times article, the very first one from a Saturday, I guess, can't remember what the date was, a few weeks ago now. There's a one line in there where they say, and they also studied the physiological experiences of the witnesses. That's pretty open-ended. That can mean a whole lot of things. That means they could have a sunburn. That means they could be telepathic. I don't know what that means. So, yes, honestly, I think the quickening, I think the world is a different place than it was in 1974. I was 12 years old. There was no such thing as the internet in any kind of meaningful way. But now there's a tool. Everyone's walking around with their phone. They're like, they can tap into all of this data from their pocket phone. So the ability, what we're doing now, like this, there were obviously, radio shows, that investigated the paranormal, in the 70s and the 60s. To do a radio show, you would have had to have a radio studio. You'd have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. You would have had to have, it
wasn't as easy as it is now. That's for sure.
It wasn't as just like signing up into, Podbean or something like that, which is what I've done. And I've done it for, $50 a year, is what my investment is, this is new in human history. So that's the quickening, I think, is that people are interested in this stuff. And I don't have the data. My sense is that in the last 15 years, there's been probably a little statistical upswing on the question. If you ask the questions, do you believe in UFOs? Do you believe in those questions are all asked? I would love to see exactly the questions that are asked, because my sense is that there's this paranormal aspect and there's this spiritual aspect, or this.
You think more people are waking up to the ideas that they used to be, tinfoil hat stuff back in the 60s and 70s?
Yes. I think that people are much more open to it. And I think it's just partially that it's become more acceptable dinner table conversation. Yeah. Right. And I know that. I can say that for a fact because I've talked about it around the dinner table with my family, that would have been, and you can tell they're kind of like, oh, it's crazy, Mike, and such. But at the same time, they ask really good questions, and no one's laughed in my face. So, which would have happened, I think, 20 years ago.
I was so proud of my father. I got to say this real quick because, he'd always be like, hey, you still doing that radio show thing? Yeah, how much money are you making? I'm like, oh, I don't know, Dad. I survive on donations and a few advertisers here and there if I can get them. Well, that doesn't sound very promising. You need to talk about politics. And I'm like, I'm not doing that, Pop. And then when that came out, he called me and he goes, hey, you seen this? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, they're saying this stuff's real on the TV. I'm like, uh-huh. And for a moment, I felt like, uh-huh, I told you so. He goes, but, yeah, and then he was like, well, it's probably more fake stuff. I'm like, oh, come on, and then he just passed it up. He don't think it. He's back to thinking about politics.
Well, this is a political issue in many ways, right? I mean, you got to, and I mean, there's all kinds of ramifications as far as, I mean, yes, there's every reason for the military to be concerned that there are flying saucers flying over their nuclear bases, right? I mean, I'm certain that's got to be the red light's got to go off when that happens. So,
yeah.
So yes, they have every right to be concerned. And they should be studying it. I think they would be, I mean, I never believed they weren't studying it, because it would have been irresponsible on their part not to take this very seriously. So what? It was secret, I don't see it as yes, I understand why it was secret. What's interesting, why is it being whispered about? Well, it's not being whispered. Why is it being spoken about quite openly right now? And I don't have an answer to that.
What I think? I think they're about to dig up an alien. That's what I think. The mummies and all this stuff, because these archaeologists keep finding stuff. And it's like, okay, well, the cat's about to be out of the bag, so maybe we could just slowly drip this down to him without panic,
Perhaps. Yeah, the Vatican was doing the same thing about 6 years ago. They were doing the same thing. They were having guys like the Vatican spokesmen were on like the NBC morning talk shows, Sunday morning talk shows, where they were saying like that if there are aliens, they're part of God's family too, and that they should be baptized. So that's
interesting.
Pretty. Yeah, that was about 6 years ago. That was that was totally mainstream, just talked about very plainly.
Well, I'm sorry I got off the subject of owls and stuff, but when I talk to somebody for the first time on this show, especially somebody that's researched as much as you, I always want to get your opinion on this, just to see your take on it.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, like, how to say it, like, I know a lot of people who do research into government documents and stuff like that. And I mean, like, if the government wanted to mess with us, boy, they're probably really sophisticated and would know exactly how to give us exactly the wrong piece of information that would send us down a wild goose chase and have us, trying to catch our own tail and spinning in circles.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not. It's not my avenue of research, is the military stuff. Here, I'll tell you a story. This comes from the book, and I think this is a good illustration of the weirdness of this stuff. So,
okay,
there's a guy named Ben. I've met with Ben. I've had long conversations with Ben, and Ben is an experiencer. He's had, and it's really interesting because he've had some long conversations with some stuff he'll tell me privately that I don't think he would share publicly, and he's asked that I don't use his last name. So he has had missing time. He's had all the things that imply UFO contact. So he's got little kids, and he's going to a roller skating party, somebody's birthday party, and he's the dad that's driving a whole van load of kids home from the roller skating party. So they're all in the van. It's nighttime. They're driving. So the kids are all like, Dad, Dad, tell us a story. And he's like, here, I'll tell you some stories. And he thinks for a second. He goes, I'll tell some of my weird UFO type stories. So he kind of whispers these stories, and he tells them in sort of a haunted kind of campfire way. And the kids are really, to pay close attention to it. So he's never told them any of this. Never told his kids this stuff. So it all culminates with a missing time story. And as soon as he gets done with the missing time story, he's driving. An owl. He finishes the punchline of the story, and there was missing time. This owl flies right in front of the windshield of his car as he's driving, and he's like no stranger to like strong synchronicities. And his first thought was like, "Oh my God, that is so corny. Like that is so cliche. Why couldn't it have been a bear?"
Right.
And then immediately, this big black thing runs across the road, and this little kid in the front seat says, "Look, a bear." It turned out to be a dog. But he said all these things happened simultaneously. Ending the story, the owl, thinking about a bear, the kid saying a bear, and the dog running across the road, whoosh, all within a second. The same guy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So the same guy goes on a hike with his kids. And they walk through the woods, and there's this owl following them. Lands on a branch. They walk down the trail. The owl flies along, lands on another branch, watches them pass, flies further down the trail, watches them pass. So the kids loved it. Like, that's the coolest thing in the world. And the dad, Ben, was kind of freaked out. Thought it was really unsettling. So they come home that night, and he's going to read a bedtime story. So he says, go ahead, pick a bedtime story, grab a book, I'll be up to read with you. So he goes up to the room, they have a book picked out, and it's called Say Boo. And it's a little kid's book with pictures in it. It's about a ghost named Ben that can't say the word boo, right? So in the story, the simple little kid's book, he meets a cow, and he wants to scare the cow, but he can't say boo. Instead, he says moo. And then in the story, he meets an owl, and he can't say boo to scare the owl, so he says who. So he reads the line in the book, and then Ben looked up into a tall pine tree and saw an owl. And at that moment, the dog starts barking downstairs. He's like, oh, what's going on? So he gets up and runs downstairs and opens the door, and there's nothing out there. And his eyes are drawn upward, and he looks up, and in a tall pine tree is an owl. So the last words he read were, and then Ben looked up into a tall pine tree and saw an owl.
What?
He's convinced it's the same owl. Now, him and I went back and forth with these stories. These were his stories. I wrote them up in the book. And in doing that, I had to go back and forth and fact check things with him and make sure everything was kosher. Yeah. So he says, you know what? These are the same stories. My story of talking to my children in the van driving with the owl was me finding my voice. Like, I couldn't have said that. Like, that was me. I was Ben the ghost who couldn't say boo. I had to muster up the courage and tell my children the story. That was me finding my voice. So, and so these are the same. He's convinced that these are the same. These stories are connected. They're both enforcing that he needs to find his voice and speak about this. This is, yes, very, very.
Wow. That's kind of spooky a little bit, though, isn't it?
So here's a story without any UFOs, right? That is, how did this get orchestrated? Who pulled the strings of reality to make the owl follow the kids on the path, and for them to pull the book, and for the dog to bark at the exact right moment, And then the punchline of the whole thing is Ben coming to the realization that this was all orchestrated for him to speak about his experiences.
Wow. It's got to be, though. It's got to be.
It's very interesting. Yeah, I don't have a good answer to what it may or may not mean, but it's very powerful. And these are the stories I'm drawn to, right? I have, there's books out there about, then I was taken on board the craft and I walked down the circular hallway and I got into this room and the medical examination. There's none of that in my book. And that's all interesting, and that's all, but I mean, that's not the research that really draws me in. The story that I just told about Ben, those are the kinds of stories that just light my fire.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Ramon in the Spreaker chat room ask Mike if he's ever heard of Kary Mullis, a Nobel Prize winner, had a missing time experience. The last thing he remembers is talking to a raccoon with glowing eyes. And has he heard of other animals like that with alien encounters?
Yes. So yes, Kary Mullis is a I think he's a Pulitzer Prize winner. Yes, I got his book. And now here's what's gets so strange. So Kary Mullis, he's kind of came out of the 60s and kind of got this kind of like radical hippie sensibility on how he portrays the sciences, right? So he's really bold about how the raccoon. So in the story, if you read the story, it's very interesting. He says he's got a house in California. I think he was working in one of the labs in California or teaching. And so he's got a house out in the mountains and he has an outhouse there. So he says, I always loved the outhouse because I could go out there and listen to the owls. This is right in his book. I could go out there and listen to the owls. And then I went out there one night and never made it to the outhouse because I got sidetracked with this glowing raccoon and this distorted time thing. So there's the connect. He's got owls right in his story. It's kind of peripheral, right? It's mentioning them as kind of a offhand way, but they're right there as part of the story. You know, he likes that spot because he hears the owls hooting. So the answer to the other question is yes. There's two aspects to this. So he saw raccoons with glowing eyes. And he said they were oversized raccoons. And he even says something like, I can't even call them raccoons. That's the only word that comes to mind. So here's a typical story. Someone's driving down the road at night. They turn a corner. There's a great big tall owl standing in the road. They pull right up to the owl. The owl's about 4 foot tall. It's looking over the hood of their car. And then they kind of move past the owl and they drive home. And when they get home, they're supposed to be home at midnight, but it's 2 a.m. They don't know why they're home late.
What?
So this is I've heard this story in
That's
one.
That's a big owl, man. 4 foot tall.
There's no such thing as a 4 foot tall owl.
Right.
There's no such thing as a raccoon with glowing eyes. And so these stories show up. So this is the implication is, so let's say this person goes to get hypnotic regression, which is very questionable. The hypnotherapist will say, well, describe this owl. They'll say, well, it's tall. It's kind of about 4 foot tall, and it's skinny, and it's got a big bald head, and it's got big shiny black eyes, and it's got a little shiny spacesuit on. And I don't think this was an owl. So what the implication is that these little gray aliens have the ability to do a psychic projection into the mind of the observer. And leading the list of what these term is screen memory, leading the list is owls, pretty much. And it's hard to know exactly because I don't have a spreadsheet with every nuanced researcher who's done work into this, but owls is pretty high on the list. Next would be deer. Both deer and owl are normal to see at night. And both these animals are also, part of a rich mythic lore, right? I mean, there's all kinds of mythologies surrounding deer and owls. Now, further down that list is squirrels, raccoons, cats. Jesus shows up a lot. Firemen show up a lot in this kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's very common for someone to tell a UFO story and they're saying, dead relatives show up, like I was lying in bed and all of a sudden I opened my eyes and there's Jesus standing at the bottom of my bed.
Yeah,
but
I've heard that one too.
Weird. Yeah, and then then the next thing they know, they have what amounts to a typical UFO contact experience. So why are they picking these, let's say, costumes, these masquerades? Why are they picking these illusions? I mean, clowns show up a lot too. So yeah, it's very
I wonder if it triggers something in the subconscious.
That's exactly the avenue of. I mean, you don't have. So let's say someone's very Christian and was raised, and then they are presented with the image of Jesus. That's going to be very soothing, right? As opposed to a little skinny gray alien. So they're being deceptive, given this model. And if they're picking an owl, do we have a subconscious archetypal knowledge of what an owl truly means on a deep archetypal level? Do we have a knowledge of what a deer means on a deep archetypal level?
Gotcha. Yeah. See, we may not know on a super like a upfront conscious level, but maybe deep down buried in our, I'm going to get into the Carl Jung stuff in our subconscious. It means something more, like it triggers a certain program or something.
Yeah, I mean, Luke Skywalker triggers he's the archetype, and that's Luke or George Lucas. Based Star Wars on the writings of Joseph Campbell, who wrote A Hero with 1,000 Faces. And that's the story of the hero. So he wrote it specifically to be an archetype, the archetype of the hero. Excuse me.
But you yourself, have you had your own missing time experiences other than the that one there, and I've had some weird experiences. Yeah, I mean, the last 30 pages of the book describes a series of experiences I had that all 3 separate experiences all throughout southern Utah.
One of them was actually just inside the Colorado border. All three of those experiences sure sound like UFO contact. And one of them had an owl. One of them had a coyote. And that was howling right there. And there's another archetypal, totem animal. I was sleeping outside in all three of these events, sleeping out under the stars. So, and then and one of them had on March 10th, 2013, I never would have written this book if it hadn't been for this event. March 10th, 2013, I slept out under the stars on the way home from a UFO conference, woke up, cold, beautiful night. I actually had the same sleeping bag, this big, thick winter sleeping bag. It was wonderful, beautiful, out in the desert.
That's great.
I woke up and looked up on this hilltop, and I said to myself, that looks just like a landed flying saucer. This is exactly what it looked like. It looked like a big, giant flying saucer on top of this hill right near me. And I was like, well, maybe someone built a house here. Maybe someone built a roundhouse. That's what I'm seeing. And I stared at this thing, and I stared at this thing, and I even said to myself, like at that point, I'd been doing a lot of UFO research, and I'd had a lot of synchronicities, and I had kind of let's say a little, like I said, I feel like got the mojo, like I got the psychic groovy thing going, and if there was a flying saucer right there, I'd know it. So I kind of laid there and kind of thought, like, are you a flying saucer? I felt nothing. Later that night, I woke up again and looked at this thing, and this coyote was howling. I mean, right near my head. I never saw it. I don't know how. It was so close. I've never experienced anything like that. It was so cool. I mean, coyotes down in the desert are tiny. They're little, like the size of a fox. So I wasn't worried about getting bit or anything like that, but it was such a cool experience to have that thing so loud. And I woke up a third time, and there was this big bush next to me, big juniper bush. And it was a light on the other side of the bush. And it was a weird light. It wasn't a car headlight. It wasn't a flashlight. It wasn't from, and I was like, what is that light? And I sat up and I kind of tried to look on the other side of the bush, and I was just like, I laid right down and went back to sleep. This is very.
Were you half asleep? I mean, I would have. You just didn't worry about it. You went back to sleep, huh?
Didn't worry about the coyote near my head. I didn't worry about the big round house. I didn't worry about the light behind the bush.
It's almost like something sedated you, man. Seemed not sedated, but maybe put you in a state of hypnotic rhythm or something,
My mind was being controlled. Yeah, I'm not oblivious to that. Yeah, I felt like, why on earth would I not have, like, holy crap, I'm out in the middle of the desert and there's some light behind the bush I'm sleeping next to, and I'm not going to, like, say, hey, who's on the other side of the bush or anything? I never did anything. So I got home that night. And so now I'm very good at making maps. I did a lot of work in an outdoor school and stuff. So I'm good at maps and good at creating maps and Google Map programs and stuff like that. So I just I got to look at this round house on Google Maps. So I knew exactly where I slept. I knew exactly where the hill was. Look online. There's nothing. And to be a building there, it would have had to have a road. It would have had to have it would have been big. So.
There's no way to prove. See, that's the thing, man. There's no way to prove this experience to somebody, but you had it. Know you had it.
I don't care. I don't want to prove. I don't have just a minute of time trying to prove it. I do try to tell the story well, and I do try to share my own emotions, but I don't care about proving it. I'll never be able to prove it. I went back to that spot later. There's no roundhouse there. I actually slept in that exact same spot. I don't know why I did that. I slept in that exact same spot again. In fact, it's really funny. When I slept there, I knew nothing was going to happen the second time. But so what happened after that was I had a momentary vision when I got back home after driving home from southern Utah. I was living out west in Idaho at the time, and I all of a sudden, for like one split second, ping, in my mind, I had this vision of a map of southern Utah with a straight line and 3 push pins on this map. And I was like, well, I got to make this map. So I figured out, and I knew exactly what the one at each end was, right? So I knew one was the event of March 10th, which was the night before. The thing with the round house and the coyote and the light behind the bush. Put that spot on the map. And then on the other end of the map was this event I had in 2010 where I was sleeping in a tent and kind of woke up in the middle of the night and felt myself rising up through the top of the tent, was in this white realm, and
oh, cool.
Said to myself, and this was scary. Now this was freaking scary.
Oh, really? You were scared, huh?
Okay. I was artificial. I mean, it was like, I've never felt anything like this before. Leading up to this, I was scared, but as soon as I started floating, I was completely void of all emotion. And I had this voice in my head that said, I have to remember this. I have to remember this. I have to remember this. And then all of a sudden that turned to, am I on a table? Am I on a table? Am I on a table? And then it felt like I was back in the tent. So the next morning I had a big scratch across my chest, which I did not have the night before. And there's all kinds of stuff associated with this thing. So that's at the other end of this line, right? So that's like 200 miles away. And I said, there's the 3 push pins in my psychic vision. So I figured out, I thought, there was this night I spent with this friend of mine. Her name was Natasha. We were driving through the desert, actually coming back from a UFO conference in 2011. And we camped at this amazing, beautiful spot called the Burr Trail Road. It's beautiful. And it's secluded, and it's, in this, what I consider a very safe part of the desert, Mormon country where, everyone's nice, basically. So, and so we were like just no issues at all. So we weren't very far from the road, and we were kind of parked off in this little kind of spot where someone had turned a car around before. So, and Natasha has jet lag. So she's coming from Germany and she's got jet lag. So she says, I need to do something. What do I do? And I said, take a walk. It's beautiful. And she said, so she took a walk and she said, it was so beautiful and so magical. She said, I was sparkling. It was such a weird vibe. I was sparkling. That's what she said. And then she looked off to the side. She was maybe 100 yards from where I was lying down trying to sleep. Moonless night, absolutely perfectly still, calm, beautiful. And she looks off into the sagebrush, and there's this floating dot of light. And it's kind of floating along. She thought it was someone with a flashlight. And she realized, no, there's just a floating dot of light, this floating orb. And then all of a sudden the orb goes and flashes, and she's freaked out. She runs back to find me. Now, as I'm lying there and she sees this dot, there's a great horned owl hooting in the tree right near my head, right in this bush. I never saw it. Same thing as a coyote. It's like same thing. It was as loud as any owl I've ever heard. It was right next to my head, as far as I know. I never saw it. I couldn't see it.
Did she say what color the light was at all? Or was it just a white?
She said it was white. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, man. Do you get into meditation at all?
A little bit. I try to. I'm not very dedicated.
Man, I think you should go. I think you should go down the.
I don't know if
I want to tell you to go down this rabbit hole or not.
It's on my life list. Yeah. So.
I'm not saying go out and take any DMT or anything like. What I'm saying is, I think
I thought about that too. But that's meditation is a little safer and a little more convenient. Yeah. So I don't have to go to South America and walk through the jungle to meditate. So.
Man, this isn't, and you've got a ton more stories like this in your book called The Messengers, right?
It is 400 pages of stories like this, and I was very clear. The best advice I ever had, I read this little thing. I think Stephen King wrote it, like one of those little things, like, ask the writer. And he said, those boring parts. Sometimes you're reading a book and you get to the boring part and you want to flip the pages. Don't write those parts.
That's good advice.
Like, really good advice. So I worked my hardest. I tried my best not to write those parts. I tried to make every single sentence vital and important.
Catalina wants to know in the Spreaker chat. So do you think owls can take the form of orbs?
Maybe. So this is, I've certainly had people, here's a story. So guy gets a hold of me and he's getting all these photographs and videos, and they're pretty interesting. He showed me a few, but they're little dots. There's not much to see. A little dot in the sky. And he says, I'm cataloging all these things. It's really serious. He's young. He's like 17, but he's really serious. He's like he sends me this spreadsheet of all the dates and the times and whether he videotaped it or took still photographs. So he's out. Oh, my cat wants to come in for a second.
Yeah, I know the feeling. That happens to me when I'm doing the show a lot. The cat jumps up on the desk, or he'll jump right up on the mixer board. Don't care. Start butting into everything, knock everything down.
So so he saw you're gonna hear the cat meowing in the background. He like saw this really close up orb, right? And it disappears, and he goes back in the house, and he finally has like the thought, and he writes it down in his diary. You know, that's the document he sends me. Like what does this mean? Why is this happening? Why me? You know, what's the bigger meaning of all of this? So here's the perfect thing, right? This is the shaman. What were you thinking about? The shaman would ask, what were you thinking about right before your experience? And he says it straight up. Why me? What's this mean? What's the deeper meaning? So he goes back outside, and there's a telephone line. There's an owl on the telephone line, and floating above the owl is an orb. So he's looking at the orb. The owl's looking at him. He looks at the owl. The owl looks at the orb. So there's like two witnesses, right? The owl and him. It's a multi-witness case. And they're both looking at this orb. So an orb is just as much of a UFO as a big giant, triangle craft, right? It is an unidentified flying object. So Kitty, what do you want? Oh, I think she wants she wants attention. She knows I'm talking to someone. So can they take the form of an orb? I think this is where you're getting into this murky territory where what's a projection, what's an illusion, I have this one woman who told me this amazing story. She woke up in the middle of the night, and she looked out her window, and there's an owl on a branch right outside her window. And the owl looks at her, and she looks at the owl. They make eye contact, and then this like blue laser beam like shoots down from the sky and hits the owl in the head, and then this laser beam comes out of the owl's third eye and hits her in her own third eye and zaps her, and she gets this download of information. And I asked her, like, what was the download? What did you get? And she said, I don't know. It's like it's something important. It was imparted into me, and I have a feeling I'll know when the time is right. Okay, now I've heard that story in one form or another many times. So I got to take it seriously. She's not the only one who's told not the exact story, but the same flavor, the same tone. So I have to take this seriously. I mean, was there really an owl there that got shot a laser beam out of its third eye?
What I'm thinking is, when you told me that, like if you went and told anybody on the street that story, they'd be like, what, and just keep kind of moving on. However, if you study consciousness at all, and when it sounds like you have, there really is no, everything is just perception anyways. And it seems to me like that these owls might be, like I said, I don't want to say omens, but maybe portals or something. I can see why you named the book The Messengers. I really can.
Well, part of the reason I named the book The Messengers is because so here's what happened. I had this blog, right? And I had the blog started in 2009, and I had all these owl experiences, and I was writing about these owl experiences and trying to come to terms with the UFO stuff and doing the interviews. And I would ask every person I interviewed, what's up with the owls? And they would all say the same thing. Like, oh, it's got this like mythology, until I asked David Weatherly, the guy who wrote the book, Black-Eyed Children. And I said, what's up with the owls? And he says, sounds like a shamanic initiation. And when he said that, it was like being on the game show when the big bell rings and the balloons drop from the ceiling and everyone applauds. It was ding, like, ding, holy ding. Crap. Like, oh, that's the perfect answer. And so where was I going with all this?
Well, that's why I'm asking you about, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's why I'm asking you about meditation and stuff, man. It seems to me like that's what you need to start doing, like going inside yourself a little bit more.
Well, believe me, I've been trying. Yeah, I do walking meditation. I feel like I really take that seriously. I go in the woods and I treat that as a meditation. So, let me just get to the point I was going to make is the blog. I asked on the blog, I asked everyone I talked to, everyone I interview, every person who's ever I meet at a UFO conference, I say, hey, have I had any odd owl experiences? And I started cataloging these things and archiving them, and I put it right on the blog, right at the top of the blog. Is I want to hear your owl experiences. So if anyone, anywhere in the world, I'm the first thing that shows up. If you type in UFOs, owls, my name comes up, and people find me, and I'm in a position to receive these stories. And it has been like the most amazingly rewarding. I stumbled onto this, or it stumbled onto me, and it has been so fascinating collecting all these stories.
Seems like you're the owl messenger, man. You're going to go down in history as the owl messenger. You are right now.
I'm certainly referred to as the owl guy.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. I see. And you know what? When I was at the conference, I was running around. We were so busy. I knew
phone and everything there. Yeah.
I knew there was something I was missing, and your table was right there, man. And I'm thinking, I'm missing out on something cool. I really wanted to talk to you for a while. This is cool. Now, are you continuing to write?
And my second book is like weeks away from being out, just barely on its way out. I'm like so close. It's like making me crazy. The last little commas are being corrected, and it should be out, I don't know, hopefully before the end of January. Knock wood. So what happened was I had these leftover stories, a handful of leftover stories that I couldn't fit in the messengers. So this book is called Stories from the Messengers. It's 17 chapters. Each chapter focuses on a series of personal experiences. And I really tell those stories completely. That was the problem with trying to tell it, to write a story and make it zip along and try to get your point across. Like I just had to abbreviate so many stories. And the problem was that these stories needed to be told in really fully. So this book is 17 stories told completely and fully with all the weird details. So I'm really happy with the way it's turning out.
Have you had any, well, before I ask you about the meditation, walk-in meditation, is there a certain type of owl? Because because we went off Spreaker, I got an email that came across here that's asking, is there a certain type of owl that people normally see, or is it all types of owls?
All types of owls. Oh, yeah. I mean, I factor in owl T-shirts, owl lunchboxes, owl puppets. I've had people's toy owls and stuff like that. Yeah. So I'm all. I mean, this is a very light synchronicity. So there's a guy who did. So any kind of owl, I'm open to it. The fake owls, those funny fake owls that they put on top of buildings and then to scare the pigeons away and stuff like that. Those, if it shows up at a moment where a buddy of mine read the book and he was like, oh my God, I just been reading the book. And all throughout the book is people like, oh my God, I saw this owl at this highly charged moment. And he said to himself, I am so primed to see this owl. And he finishes the book and he walks outside and he's in his shop. And while he was inside, the guy across the street, he has a little iron workshop. He's a blacksmith. The guy across the street had installed one of those motion detecting owls that actually moves. So he as soon as he steps out, he sees this mechanical owl and he was like, yeah, he was so happy that he got his little synchronistic moment from the book.
You're saying the symbol of an owl shows up a lot. It doesn't matter if it's just the owl itself. The symbol of it.
Yeah. I mean, if it's an owl, a symbol, what's the difference between you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
I get that.
Yeah. I sure. You can have an owl. Yeah, owl. I got all kinds of. It's obviously a real owl's got a lot of power to it, and maybe I weight those a little more. But I take the story seriously. Owl dreams I take seriously, as far as what's the hidden message there. I get a lot of people sending me their owl dreams.
So, have you had any awakenings or spiritual experiences during your walking meditations or your hiking trips?
I think of hiking as a spiritual thing. So. Yeah, I'm not trying anything. Sure. So yeah. So what started me on this whole thing was seeing owls while camping. Right. So I was camping with a friend and we saw 3 owls at sunset. It was right when she was talking about God. She said she was talking about God and these owls showed up right at that moment. And then we went camping 4 days later. In a different part, this is I was living right near Grand Teton National Park near Wyoming. And we went 3 days later, we went camping again and we walked up to this little hilltop at sunset to watch the sun go down. And the 3 owls showed up again. And I didn't say it then, but I'm saying it now. This is in the book. there was a voice in my head when both times we saw these owls, and it was like, this has something to do with UFOs. This happened in 2006, before I started looking into my own UFO contact experiences. And I'll tell you, it was like, I knew the implication of missing time. I knew what it meant to, you know, to see a UFO out the window. And I got more stories than just that. So I had those clues, and it was the owls. I'm saying this straight up. It was the owls that forced me to look into my own experiences. I would have just danced around it. I would have denied it. I would have put it off. I never would have followed up on it, except those owls were so strange. And I heard a voice in my head that said, this has something to do with the UFOs, when I saw those owls. And it made me a little crazy. There was a few years where I had so many owl synchronicities. I had so many synchronicities that pointed to UFO contact. It was the stuff of,
did you question your own sanity at times?
Absolutely. I mean,
I was getting that vibe.
I was just like right on the edge there. There was a little health food store in my town, and I would go in there and talk to the people that worked in the health food store, and those are my therapists. You know, they're all hippies, and they're all really open to this stuff. And I would be like, oh my God, this synchronicity happened today. I don't know what to make of it. It's just so intense. I can't believe it. It's just the craziest thing ever. And it's all points to this owl thing. And it just happened day after day after day. And you know what, honestly, at a certain point I got bored with it, and I just stopped being freaked out, and it calmed down. And that chapter of my life between about 2006 to about 2010, that was not a peaceful chapter of my life. And then from that, the blog emerged, and then the book came from the blog.
That's incredible how this stuff, you know that you're doing it for a reason now. It's funny that it's the same thing with me. I know there's purpose, but I'm still trying to figure it out because I can't quit. A question that I bring up a lot is, you know, if you ever want to know if you're doing the right thing, just to ask, you know, hey, would you trade the consciousness that you have now for what you had, I don't know, 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Definitely not. You know,
it's a surefire. Writing a book about UFOs is a surefire way to go broke. First of all, because a lot of times you get ain't much back. I get a little, buy the groceries every once in a while, but but yes, it feels like I don't have any proof of this. My sense, my kind of intuitive knowing is that this has all been orchestrated, and I have been set on this path by an outside source.
Man, I'd have to agree with you after the stories that you're saying here, and I can't wait to get into your book. And where can everybody find your book, by the way? I know we only got a few minutes left here. Where can everybody find your website, your book, and all that stuff?
So my website is just Google my name, Mike Cleland Owls. Just Google owls and UFO. My website will come right up. My website is called Hidden Experience. It's Hidden Experience, all one word, .blogspot.com. You can go to Amazon. You can type in my name. You can type in UFOs Owls. The book will come right up. The Messengers. Very soon, within a month, before February 1st, knocking wood here, the second book, Stories from the Messengers, will also be available. And those two are companions. They're meant to be on the bookshelf side by side.
I need to ask you for a favor, man. I had such a fun time, an interesting time talking to you tonight. After this book comes out, will you please come back on Lighting the Void?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to be believe me, I got 2 years of work in that book. I'm going to be promoting that thing. So yeah, I want to make sure that I'm proud of it, and I want to make sure people get a chance to read it.
Well, awesome, man. Hey, thanks for coming out to the show. I can't wait to talk to you again. This was very, very interesting, and I look forward to speaking with you again. This was great.
Great. Thanks. It's a delight.
All right, guys, that was Mike Cleland. Go check it out at MikeCleland.com. All the links are there on Lighting the Void as well. Great show. Sorry about the tech difficulties in the beginning, but we will get it all wrapped up and edited for your podcast listeners as well. Don't forget, this show was produced by The Fringe FM and cannot be rebroadcast or syndicated without written permission. Also, music was by Chronox, Kevin MacLeod, and Spaceboy at spaceboymusic.com. See you guys Saturday night.